One of the best, if not the best series of horror games surely goes to the Resident Evil franchise. With plenty of games in its back, numerous bangers, and millions of fans, it surely stands at the top of its category. However, each game has its own identity and theme to represent it, and with the Resident Evil Requiem closing in, I feel like this is the best time for a full ranking of the main story games. So grab a drink and join me in this memorable journey back in time. In the last place sits easily Resident Evil 6. With its very long and unreplayable story, it's very difficult to rank it any higher. The game, although it had promised revolution, and it surely had some potential if done right, it almost destroyed the entire series. With its lack of terror and immersiveness, Capcom tried to boost their player base and failed tragically. Although at the time its graphics and story were somewhat good, everything else demolished its reputation. It surely isn't a terrible game to play, and sometimes it might be even enjoyable, but it doesn't connect with the principles and the construct of a true Resident Evil game. Therefore, it is a straight-up downgrade from its horror predecessors, and thus getting the last place. Next on the list, we have Resident Evil Revelations. The worst of the Revelation games, in my opinion, but still better than 6, due to the very big development in the horror section. A cool game for its time. The side characters took a lot of screen time, and they were boring. Also, the lack of co-op in this game, although you always have a partner right next to you, doesn't help this game's case. Overall, a solid game, but surely worse compared to the others. On a good note though, the gameplay is actually pretty good, and it's a step into a more horror-focused setting compared to other titles such as 6, something that the game's fanbase usually prefer. All in all, I would give this game a 6 out of 10 considering its release date, but it doesn't come close to the titles above. Next up, we have Revelations 2. A lot of the problems that Revelations 1 had could be observed in this game too. The distant feel to the characters puts the player out of the immersion of the game. Still, there are some things that make this game a little bit better and worthwhile than the titles mentioned before. For starters, the horror exceeds even better than its predecessor. Also, its combat system was visually much smoother. The story was indeed better scripted and more in line for its series standards, but the biggest reason it stands higher is the addition of more various bonus modes, with my favorite also being there, Invisible Enemy Mode.
Number 10, Resident Evil 3 Remake. Comparing myself to the other fans of the Resident Evil franchise, I honestly can say that I am probably in the minority when it comes to my feelings about this game. Although it is considered a very bad and small remake, I caught myself playing it a lot of times, mainly because it is so fast-paced. The cutscenes are pretty awesome, and the combat is pretty smooth. The side characters are so engaging and well-written. Also, the dodge mechanic improves so drastically in this game. On the downside, this game has so few costumes for your characters, which is disappointing because in the original, Jill had so much more options. Overall, it is a good and very intriguing game, but it had to offer so much more if it wasn't so short. In the 9th spot, we have Resident Evil Code Veronica. Code Veronica is actually one of the most challenging games in the series. The amount of ammo the game provides you is brutal, and you might find yourself reloading saves in order to stock up and manage your resource better than the times before. This new feature actually makes playing this game a little more interesting and anxious to play than other entries of the series. However, since Code Veronica is one of the few mainline games that haven't got a remake, makes it being in a less than ideal state than other Resident Evil games out there. However, its uniqueness and its ability to tie up very well the lore with the rest of the series surely makes up for it. When it comes to Resident Evil 0 with its modern graphics, beautiful combat and fixed camera always make me want to revisit this game. And considering that Rebecca Chambers is the protagonist in this game, the only game that she is by the way, makes it even more appealing in my eyes. You also have the ability to unlock various costumes for Rebecca. You play different bonus modes and of course the fan favorite Wesker mode. Unfortunately, there is a single flaw in this game that makes it almost unplayable, and that being the lack of an item box. Although in every other game there was a presence of an item box, or even a place to store few things, in this game there is none, and that is what sets this game way back. It certainly would rank higher, but I can't ignore such a massive flaw, especially for such a game. Resident Evil 5. When it comes to Resident Evil 5, there are a lot of elements that keep players entertained multiple times. For one, the combat is extremely smooth and easy to get used to. Sure, the no moving while aiming thing can be annoying at first, but other than that, the combat in this game, especially in boss fights, is pretty fantastic. Then we have the big and final reunion of Chris, Wesker, and Jill Valentine, three main characters that have been around since the beginning of the franchise. As for unlockables and DLC, Resident Evil 5 has a handful of them, making players enjoy again and again. Overall, a great game, but anything above is unmatchable. Next up, RE3 Nemesis. RE Nemesis is the most ambitious game of the series when it comes to branching narratives. Although in most Resident Evil games, players will have one or two major choices that can be made throughout the story, in RE3 Nemesis Capcom has created an entire mechanic around this concept in which the player will have multiple opportunities to make a tough choice that can change events in the game, leading in one of the three different endings depending on the player's playthrough. This is easily the most crucial feature in the game since it's multiplying its replayability. It was also the first game to introduce the famous Mercenaries mode that we all got to love and enjoy. Also, RE3 Nemesis exceeds by far its remake in character customization since it has 7 different dressing styles for Jill. One of the most replayable and surely the most iconic game of the entire franchise, the remake of the original Resident Evil sits at the 5th spot of this ranking. There is absolutely no way you are a die-hard Resident Evil fan if you haven't played this game. This is where everything started, how the entire series that we love was born. It surely is somewhat outdated compared to the more recent remakes, but that doesn't stop it from being good. Firstly, its setting in the mansion is epic, since this is the most horrifying place in the entire franchise. All the iconic and original characters such as Wesker, Jill, Rebecca take place in this banger of a starter. Nothing in the horror industry compares to the atmosphere of sieging and roaming through this creepy old mansion. It allows you to play with either Jill Valentine or Chris the Goat Redfield. Most of the elements remain the same in each character, but some character developments and story narratives change along the way. Number 4, Resident Evil Village. I think this is a very common and justified rank for this game. Firstly, it's probably the best looking game of the series since it's the latest as well. Village has a handful of features today that can motivate the players to play it again and again. The Villager's Shadow difficulty challenges players more than any other Resident Evil before. Unlockable items like the lightsaber give the players the opportunity to feel the game in a very different way than they have gotten used to. And the newer feature that was released 1 year after the game, the third-person gameplay, allows the game to be played in the same way the modern RE remakes have been created, like RE4 Remake. Then if you add one of the best stories of the series, exciting boss fights, series icon Chris Goat Redfield, and the Shadows of Rose DLC, it's very obvious why this game stands at 4th place. Now on to the big 3, the silver medal gets surely to RE7. Firstly, this game's mechanics are extraordinary. It also doesn't feel like a long semi-road game like many other games do, allowing the player to easily jump back into playing the story of this game. Also, unlike Resident Evil Village hardest difficulty, RE7's hardest difficulty create a whole new experience of the game, filled with anxiety and fear, since Madhouse mode not only increases the difficulty of the game but also changes the item locations, making the game a lot more complicated. All in all, the survival horror over the more action factor that other games of the series have make this game more enjoyable and replayable. It surely has potential to be the best, and if someone ranks it first, I wouldn't completely disagree, but the titles ahead hold a special place in my heart. In the close second call, we have the Resident Evil 4 and its remake. If I had to guess which game has the most fans in the entire franchise, surely I would say this game without a second thought. Even though I am more of a fan of this series for the horror part, let's face it, this game changed the gaming landscape and redefined horror with its take on action horror, and it's very difficult to deny that both the original and the remake are the most played games of the franchise for many fans of the series. The gameplay in both versions is truly addicting. They have one of the most fun, terrifying, and well-written boss fights, and not just in the series, but in all horror games, period. And with fan-favorite Leon Skennedy leading the pack with his charming personality and famous small liners, it's kind of hard to not put Resident Evil 4 in the #1 spot. Especially when you add the extra content created like the best DLC in the entire series, and the highly anticipated Mercenaries. It was really difficult for me to put RE4 in the number 2 spot, but the title ahead is a one-time experience. In the winner spot, we have the one and only Resident Evil 2 remake. What can I even describe in this game? Everything is perfect. The horror factor is so well created, and there is a spice of action as well, creating the perfect balance as all games should be. Two iconic fan-favorite characters of the series are introduced, that being Claire and Leon S. Kennedy. Whether you chose to play as Leon's first day as a cop or helped in Claire's search for her brother, both characters made a major impact to players to the point where they both appear in multiple games, live-action movies, and even CGI animated films. It also stars arguably the most iconic location in the game, the RPD. The main antagonist, Mr. X, is super creepy, tough, and scary. The soundtrack is also probably the best in the entire series, making players playing it on repeat for several times. Also, the concept of the A and B scenario is super cool and is beautifully introduced, although some argue that it is repetitive, in which I disagree a lot, since his option gives you 4 different unique playthroughs, something that no game has achieved in this series. But we can't end here without mentioning the existence of the most iconic bonus mode in the series, that being the 4th survivor in the game, something that the players loved and enjoyed. All in all, this game is almost perfect with very few, if not any flaws, and that's why it's crowned with the first place. I think this is the ultimate and more accurate rating out there, but you're free to tell me your opinion in the comments. With less than a week for Resident Evil Requiem, I am super hyped and I am ready to play as Leon again. I hope Requiem exceeds my expectations, but I guess we will have to wait and see where it ranks in this list. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.